In September of 2021, Mark O'Neil and Kim Crumbo, two veteran ex-park rangers, would disappear in Yellowstone National Park. The pair were half-brothers, very close, and given their expertise and background, they loved spending time in these kinds of wilderness areas. At this point in their lives, Mark was 67 and Kim was 74 years old, so while getting on in their lives, the two of them were highly experienced. The first time I came across their disappearance was from the Salt Lake Tribune, who reported this on the 21st of September 2021. A search and rescue operation is underway in Yellowstone National Park for Mark and Kim. Relatives reported the pair missing after they were overdue from a backcountry trip on Sunday when they didn't return from their expected 4-night excursion. They were reported missing on the 19th, which means that they could have disappeared or met with trouble anywhere from the 15th or 16th onwards. It also appears that part of the search effort was put together on the exact day that they were reported missing and then further expanded thereafter. In the same article, we find that Mark was found on the 20th. Crews found Mark's body Monday along the east shore of Shoshone Lake, the second largest lake in Yellowstone, according to a National Park Service news release. Kim remains missing. Searchers on Sunday first found a vacant campsite on the south side of the lake. The next day, crews found a canoe, a paddle, personal flotation device, and other items along the lake's east shore. Again, the actual date of disappearance is unclear, but at some point during this ordeal, the weather did worsen in the area. Shoshone Lake is prone to high winds and its average water temperature is a cold 48 degrees Fahrenheit or 9 degrees Celsius. On Sunday, Yellowstone received its first major snowstorm of the season. Kim himself was highly experienced when it came to bodies of water. For 2 decades of service, his work included being a river ranger and wilderness coordinator at the Grand Canyon National Park, in addition to being a park ranger. As well as that, Kim also worked as a professional river guide for 10 years and he was a former Navy SEAL too. So if anyone knew the dangers of rivers at a very in-depth level, it was Kim. On that point too, Mark also worked as a river guide, so they both will have been well aware of what they were dealing with. Now, given that the search teams found a canoe, paddle and flotation device along the east shore of the lake, it seems that it wasn't the case that Mark had been passing by and had fallen in. Rather, it seems to suggest that the pair had planted a canoe there, and clearly they had taken some safety measures given that a personal flotation device was found along the shore. Mark's remains were found on the east shore, but the flotation device seems to be listed as being found separately. So that raises the initial question, did he have it on in the first place? Did he remove it? Or did it just come off sometime after? That's not immediately clear. In any case, despite finding Mark, Kim was nowhere to be seen. During the last 5 days, crews have been searching the Shoshone Lake shoreline by boat, swept the trails in the area, and have searched the open waters by helicopter. The National Park Service's Submerged Research Centre says they will begin using sonar equipment to detect clues in the water for Kim. They would never find these clues, and the focus on the lake was intense, in the sense that it was thoroughly searched, repeatedly, but no signs were presenting themselves. During this time, because no trace of Kim could be found at all, the search also encompassed the nearby trails and the surrounding forest areas. This didn't work, no footprints or any kind of clues were ever found. An interesting point is that they couldn't identify a cause of passing for Mark right away. Given that he was found on the east shore of the lake, you might suspect accidental drowning, but this wasn't actually the case. An autopsy has determined that a man whose body was found on the shore of a lake in Yellowstone National Park passed away as a result of hypothermia, park officials said Wednesday. What happened remains under investigation. As said earlier, from what I can gather, it seems to be reported that the equipment were found separately from the body, though the cause of passing itself revealed that the cause wasn't drowning, but rather hypothermia. So does this mean that he was in fact wearing the flotation device? The floating device in question is a life jacket. Could the body easily have slipped out of there? The obvious problem here is that if he wasn't wearing it, you'd expect the cause to be drowning and not hypothermia. Or perhaps the articles just aren't worded the best and he was wearing it, but sure doesn't read that way. In any case, back to the Salt Lake Tribune. Crews continue to look for Kim. Teams are searching near Shoshone Lake on foot and by boat, and with the help of dog teams, a helicopter and sonar. Needless to say, but the dogs never found Kim's scent, and the sonar equipment never revealed Kim's location. While Occam's razor would suggest that perhaps he was in the lake, we have no evidence of this, and the searches as well as the sonar scans were coming up negative. It's estimated that in these waters, at these temperatures, a person might only survive for between 20 and 30 minutes after entering. The 20 or 30 minutes there being the time in which the stages of hypothermia would have completely progressed. This raises an interesting point to think about. Kim, for whatever reason, can't have been wearing his flotation device or he'd have been found floating. At least, as far as my understanding goes of these devices, that seems inevitably to be the case. However, this never happened, so either he wasn't wearing one, it also came off somehow but was never found, or he wasn't in the lake. After around 3 weeks of searching, the effort was scaled down. The search for Kim has continued for nearly 3 weeks using helicopters, boats, sonar technology and ground crews, park officials said. The park will continue limited search efforts as long as conditions allow this year. That is quite literally the end of the paper trail. Over a year has passed now and Kim hasn't been found. It seems odd that no trace was found. If he was in the water, you'd have expected his life jacket to be found. Or maybe he wasn't wearing one. That seems unlikely given his background and expertise. However, anything said now is only ever going to be complete speculation. In the end, it seems at this time we don't have a great understanding as to what happened in the lake. This is a disappearance that I'll keep checking back in on, so if there's ever any updates, I'll share it. Now, let's explore the next disappearance. Daniel Robinson was 24 years old when he disappeared on the 23rd of June 2021. Daniel was very much a keen outdoorsman and loved spending time in the fresh air. He was also very close to his family too and always maintained constant contact with them. At the time of his disappearance, he was a hydro-geologist and had found work at a remote drill site in the Arizona desert. This location was near Buckeye, not far from Sun Valley Parkway and Cactus Road. Daniel was working with a pump technician called Ken Elliott, and they were together that morning between 9:15 and 9:30 am. This is important because it wasn't Daniel's first job of the day, it was his second, implying that he must have been going for quite some time at this point and must have been up very early. This was Ken's first time working with Daniel, and the two hadn't met before, but they were tasked with working on a deep well project in the area so that water could be easily accessed. Something odd took place early on that day, and Ken would recall that Daniel became distracted. He was just looking off into the desert. He had a very, very distant look in his eyes. Whenever he'd turn around again, I would look at him and look into his eyes. The first thing I thought was maybe it was some kind of substance he'd taken or something, though his pupils were not dilated. From that standpoint, everything appeared to be normal. Then I thought this was a medical condition or something. I wasn't too sure. I kept watching him, but he just kept turning around and looking off into the desert. Then he just turned around and walked back over to his Jeep, and I just assumed he was going to get something out of his vehicle. He opened the door, got in, sat down, put on his seatbelt, and then he looked at me and just waved at me, and backed up and took off. So Daniel was obviously displaying odd behaviour at this point, and it's not clear why he kept turning around to look at the desert. Ken obviously thought that this was odd, and straight away thought that Daniel may have either took some kind of substance, or perhaps was having some kind of medical situation. It seems he initially didn't believe it was too serious either way, and after some thought, it also seems he leaned towards medical as opposed to a substance. Odd behaviour right before a disappearance is something that I've covered a number of times at this point, and two that I always think about right off the top of my head are Gaia Purp and Noah Donohue. Both of which I've covered before on the channel, so I'll link them separately at the top right and in the description in case you haven't seen them and want to open a new tab. In any case, when Daniel got in the Jeep, he drove off and waved. This is something Ken wasn't expecting, and obviously was taken aback by this, so he immediately called his co-workers and told them what just happened. He said that he didn't really know how to take it, and told them that he thought Daniel was sick and that they might expect a phone call from Daniel explaining that he wasn't well. This phone call would never arrive. In fact, there was no further communication at all. It's not clear precisely what time he was reported missing, but he was reported missing the same day to the Buckeye Police Department. The trigger for this seems to have been that he just simply wasn't heard from at all after he left. In addition to that, when Ken later left work, he saw Daniel's tyre tracks veer off in the wrong direction at a T-junction that would return him to Phoenix. Instead of turning left, he'd gone right, which took him deeper into the Sonoran Desert. The authorities descended on the area, alongside outside search agencies too, and over 70 square miles were scoured by UTVs, cadaver dogs, and air support, including a drone and helicopter. Police did have Daniel's phone provider ping the phone, but it wasn't trackable because it was out of range, they said. The phone provider also revealed that Daniel hadn't used the phone thereafter because there were no further calls or messages sent from the device. This next part is somewhat interesting, so let's get bizarre. On July 21, a rancher found the Jeep rolled over and on its side in a ravine on his property. The airbags in the vehicle were deployed, and officials said evidence shows Daniel was wearing his seatbelt at the time of the crash. Daniel's father said, "Initially, I was scared when I first got the call. We have the vehicle, but we don't have my son." Daniel's father, David, hired accident reconstructionist and private investigator Jeff McGrath to piece together how Daniel's Jeep ended up in the ravine. "Immediately when I saw the vehicle, I noticed something wasn't right with it. The damage didn't match with the terrain and where it was laying," said McGrath. McGrath downloaded the vehicle's information from the airbag control module and found the Jeep was started more than 40 times after the airbags were deployed. After the airbags came out, somebody turned that ignition over at least 46 more times. That's not normal, we usually see 1 or 2 because it adds when we download the box. Interestingly, this module also tracks the vehicle's speed after the airbags are deployed. McGrath found that there were an additional 11 miles on the car after the airbags were deployed, meaning, obviously, that after the Jeep had crashed, it was driven again. Inside the vehicle, authorities found Daniel's phone, wallet, keys and clothing. It's unclear what they meant by clothing. I'm not sure if he had undressed, or if it was a change of clothing that they'd found. A couple of details make this discovery somewhat curious. The area that the Jeep was found had been searched initially, but it either wasn't there or it was missed. The authorities said that because of the rough terrain, the vehicle wasn't clearly visible to crews searching by air and foot. It can't really be ascertained now if they'd missed it or if it just wasn't there, but that was the direct quote from the spokesperson. Second to that is the fact that the rancher who discovered the Jeep had said that he thought that it had only been there for a short while before he came across it. He said it was clean and that his cows would have found it. Cows are inquisitive creatures and would have licked it. That comment by the rancher seems to suggest that the vehicle may not have been there during the initial search. But again, it looks like we're not going to know for sure now. Just to be clear too, Daniel disappeared on the 24th of June and his Jeep was found by the rancher almost a whole month later on the 21st of July. Going back to the investigation, while the authorities were suggesting that foul play didn't seem to have occurred here, McGrath noted a couple of interesting points. McGrath says the system shows that the Jeep was involved in a collision around 1 PM, nearly 4 hours after he was last seen. We have a gap in time and we don't know where he went and what was going on. The activity with the vehicle is very suspicious, and any time we get a download that doesn't match, by looking at the photographs it doesn't match the area, sometimes those could be a staged event, and that looked like a staged event to me. Those were some powerful words by Jeff, because what he is essentially saying is that something doesn't add up here, and perhaps a strong possibility exists that the car was placed there after the fact by Jeff himself or a third party. I'm not sure what else he could have meant there. There were some thoughts flying around the investigation questioning Daniel's mental health and that there may have been a couple of problems there. It seems that these ideas had come about given his behaviour that morning, and friends had said that he wasn't quite himself in the time leading up to the disappearance. It was also later found that he had recently been rejected by a girl. It looks like he became attached too quickly to her and she didn't like that. He also seems to have turned up at her house unannounced, which she didn't like. If he was suffering at that time, I imagine that situation didn't help much. But his family have contested this line of thought about mental health problems, stating that Daniel wouldn't just up and leave without telling the family, and that it was completely out of character to do so. That aside, and as you can probably imagine, given the discovery of the Jeep, the search area was well defined at this stage, and the search effort was localised to that point. Around a week after this, a skull was found to the south of where the Jeep had been located, but it was found that it didn't belong to Daniel. I've just had to come back and edit this in, because I've had another look and it appears that Daniel did undress in the Jeep. They found a t-shirt and jeans that were turned inside out, shorts, his orange work vest, boots and 2 socks. Again, it's not clear if Daniel changed clothing in the car or if he had literally undressed just about everything. I also wanted to edit in that I found another unusual quote by Jeff. One of the leading hypotheses at this point was that Daniel had simply become delirious, taken off his clothing and walked off into the desert. However, obviously to this date Daniel hasn't been found, which by now might have been expected if this was the case. In relation to this, Jeff added, "If you were delirious and ripped off all your clothing and wandered out into the desert, you wouldn't stick one of your shoes under the car. My personal theory is that someone deliberately wrecked that vehicle out there. The question becomes, who did that, why, and under what circumstances did that occur? Meaning that if Jeff had gone the wrong way at the junction and had gone deeper into the desert, would you have expected to come into contact with a third party out there? It seems unlikely at first glance, but of course I don't know that. In the end, and at this time, it appears as though no one really knows what happened to Daniel, or even why he ended up out there. Or actually, if he or his body is still out there. I'll keep looking at this disappearance, and I'll update it if anything else is found. With that being said, now is probably a good time to end this video and hand it over to you in the comments below. I'd just like to take the time to thank you for watching, and a big thank you to the patrons who've been running around on the screen. If you found the video interesting, then please do leave a like, hit the bell and subscribe if you haven't already, it helps me a lot. If not, then feel free to leave a dislike, I'm just looking for your honest opinion either way. I hope that you've had a great day, or evening depending on where you are, and I'll see you in the next one. Be safe guys, peace.